Okay, so welcome to Bar Talk for November 14th, 2023, our last Bar Talk for the year. I am admitting people as I go here. I'm Angela Armstrong. I'm the executive director, for those who may not know that. And we have some great guests here today to talk to us about our Rural Access to Justice Task Force and our initiatives. But before we get to that, I just have a couple of updates that you can see on the screen. If you haven't renewed your membership yet, please take the time to do so. We'll be closing that out as of December 15th. So you don't want to lose your membership benefits. Legal Year in Review is this Thursday. Hopefully most of you have signed up and will be joining us, but if you haven't, you can go online and register still. We will be closed next Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving. Bridging the Gap and MCILS training will occur on December 5th at the Hilton Garden Inn. If you have interest, if you don't qualify for Bridging the Gap because you're not a new lawyer, you can still attend the MCILS training if that is of interest to you. And finally, the Maine Law, Business, and Society Summit. It's basically our winter bar conference, but it's taking on a twist this year. We're holding it down in Portland, and it's turning out to be quite an interesting program. We're partnering with the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So once registration opens, which we expect to do in December, be on the lookout for that because it's going to be a great program. That's all I have. So Stacy, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Angela. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stacy Stitham, and I am the current, albeit soon outgoing president of the Maine State Bar Association. And thank you for joining us on our last bar talk of 2023. For those of you who attended our winter bar conference in January, you will recall that I announced the formation of a Rural Access to Justice Task Force. That came about due to several different organizations coming to the conclusion that a more collaborative effort was needed. And today I thought it would be wonderful to hear from some of the representatives on the task force about the work that they've been doing. So I'd like to start by introducing our panel, and then I will be asking them various questions to guide that discussion. I would certainly encourage any of you with questions or comments to put them in the chat, and we will have time for questions at the end. Angela will keep track of those questions. So please, if you do have questions, put them in the chat and we will hopefully get to them. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel today, starting with the chair of the task force, Zach McNally. Zach is a partner at Hale and Hamlin in Ellsworth. He serves as vice president of the Hancock County Bar Association, district governor for the Maine State Bar Association, and the MSBA's representative to the Rural Access to Justice Task Force. Zach has deep ties to the state of Maine and its rural communities. He was born and raised in Sherman before graduating from Machias Memorial High School and attending the University of Maine. Also with us today, we are honored to have Associate Justice Andrew Mead. Justice Mead attended the University of Maine and New York Law School. He was a member of the Bangor law firm of Payne, Lynch & Weatherby and Mitchell and Stearns, and is a past president of the Maine State Bar Association. Justice Mead served as chief judge of the Penobscot Tribal Court from 1980 to 1990, was appointed to the Maine District Court, then the Maine Superior Court, and has previously served as chief justice of the Maine Superior Court from 1999 to 2001. As many of you know, he was appointed to the Maine Supreme Judicial Court in 2007, has served as acting chief justice of the Supreme Judicial Court from 2020 to 2021, and is currently the Senior Associate Justice. He has served as a judicial liaison to the Maine Rules of Evidence Advisory Committee, chair of the Judicial Evaluation Committee, and chair of the Task Force on Electronic Court Records. He also currently serves as chair of the Maine Justice Action Group. And last but not least, we have Erika Kranz with us, who is Director of Career Development at Maine Law. Erika joins Maine Law from the Department of Justice, where she worked as an appellate attorney and served as law clerk coordinator for her office, part of the DOJ's Environmental and Natural Resource Division. Erika received her BA from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and her JD from Georgetown University Law Center. So welcome to all three of our distinguished panelists today. It's going to be a wonderful discussion, I'm sure. And I just wanted to get started with a little background on the issue of rural access to justice, including access to counsel in rural areas. And I will start with you, Justice Mead, for the court's perspective on that.
Thanks, Stacey, and welcome to everybody who's joining us here today. It's an honor to be here, and attacking this challenge is going to be particularly difficult. I think from the court perspective, the problem is easy to define. We simply don't have enough lawyers in rural locales, and in some instances, there are no lawyers available or willing to do the general practice. We don't need anything further than that, but the figures support it. The National Center for Access to Justice rates locales based upon how many resources are available to help folks. In the group they looked at, we placed in the lower tiers. There were 13 states that were worse than us, but there were 38 that were better. As the chair of the Justice Action Group, we monitor access to legal aid and pro bono attorneys. And again, there are figures available there. And in Maine, for every 10,000 low-income individuals, we have 1.88 legal services attorneys available. And as we all know, I think rural locations historically had small but vibrant bars, and things folks stepped up, but that's all changed. And the new lawyers seem to be unwilling to locate to rural settings. I think the fact of the matter is that the lack of general practice lawyers goes hand in hand with the lack of criminal defense lawyers. As you well know, our indigent representation system is in a full-blown crisis. It gets a lot of attention, but the need for civil legal practice lawyers is equally in crisis. Doesn't seem to get the same attention. We need to get the word out on that. Anyone who has been in the trial courts, including judges and lawyers, has seen unrepresented litigants struggle to navigate the legal system. They often leave the system dissatisfied and cynical and critical of the whole justice system. And in this era, when the credibility of our cherished institutions is under attack, we can't afford a single person leaving the courthouse with a sense that justice is just an illusion. So the court's perspective, bottom line, we need more people connected with more lawyers from their communities to push back on the erosion of confidence in our justice systems. How do we do that? It doesn't seem to be a single answer, but there are things we can do, and there are combinations of things acting in concert that can move the ball forward. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that, in a nutshell, is the court's perspective.
Thank you, Justice Mead. Erika, I would appreciate if you could share a few words maybe from the law school's perspective.
Sure. I would echo a lot of what Justice Mead just said, so I won't repeat it, but I'll add this. Maine Law, as obviously the only law school in the state, as a public institution, we see this problem as our problem. It's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about and are working to solve. In a few minutes, I'll talk specifically about a couple of those programs. But it is really important to us, and we are actively working to bring in students that are interested in working in rural areas and to encourage our students to explore those opportunities.
Thank you. And Zach, anything to add from a practitioner's perspective?
Well, I think, again, Justice Mead did a really good job of describing the issue. Like, the issue is not an unknown. There just aren't enough attorneys in rural areas. What does that mean for, someone like me in private practice with one of those general practices that he's describing? It means that our phones are ringing off the hook all the time, every day, with people desperate for representation, and we simply just can't help all of them or most of them or quite a few of them. It's not a problem just for private practices either. I know the legal services providers are facing the same issue, just not enough attorneys to meet the need. To put kind of a finer point on it, Washington County right now has about one attorney for every 5,000 residents. The definition of a legal desert is one attorney for 1,000 residents. So it's considerably worse than that. We have 7 counties in the state right now that would meet the definition of a legal desert. And those problems are pervasive across private practice and legal services, as I said. It's the why, which we'll get into a lot more as this conversation continues. The why is really the meat of the subject. It's a very nuanced issue. Probably everybody on this call has a reason that they believe that attorneys have left rural practice or refused to go to rural practice or whatever the case may be. But there's not just one reason. I think that's what we've really concluded. There's a lot of different elements here, and that's what makes it so challenging. But also it means that I think we can really make some changes to affect certain parts of that and hopefully turn this around in the long term.
Thank you, Zach. Erika, you mentioned sort of an inventory of programs the law school is actively working on now. Before we turn to the task force itself, I'd love to hear from you about what the law school has been doing and what various organizations around the state have been doing to try to rectify this problem in the past.
Sure. So the way I think about this is sort of 3 parts as a potential rural practitioner moves into and then through their career. So the sort of first part of it is recruiting, right? How recruiting students from rural areas who might be interested in becoming a lawyer who serves their community. And that starts really even in high school. So there are programs like the mock trial program in the state. There's the law day program. It's a writing competition for high school students. And these are really programs meant to sort of inspire, educate, or connect students with ideas and practitioners, and hopefully encourage them to go to law school. There's also the 3+3 program. It's basically a joint venture between Maine Law and several different colleges and universities where students can finish their undergraduate degree and then get a law degree in a total of 6 years. Basically, their 4th year of undergrad counts as their 1st year of law school or vice versa. I mention this because for someone from a small town who wants to become a lawyer and get back there and serve their community, it's a great way to get it done. Get it done quickly. Fewer years in school means probably less debt. And so it can be a great tool for students who are driven towards that purpose. The second category of programs are things that the law school is doing, right? Things that while they're in school here, how can we encourage them, sort of move them on this path? One of them is Maine Law's new rural practice clinic in Fort Kent. This clinic is part of a 3-year pilot program. We very much think it's been a success. I think we'd love for it to be expanded, right? And maybe establish other, or at least become a model for clinics in other parts of the state. How the clinic works is essentially it serves as almost like a general practice law firm for low-income clients in the Fort Kent area. 2 students at a time work as student attorneys there under the supervision of a fellow and a professor, and they do all manner of stuff. Like Zach said, the phone doesn't stop ringing. They're busy all the time serving that community. So it's getting them a taste of what that work is like. It's getting them integrated into that community. It's getting them connected. It's hopefully showing them that this could be a really great career, helping out in a place that really needs more legal services. We also have the Rural Practice Fellowships. The name is similar, but it's very actually different program. This program connects mentors, like hopefully many of you on the call, basically practitioners in small places outside of Southern Maine, who might like to mentor a law student for the summer, bring them under your wing, show them the ropes, let them get a taste of what your practice is like, help them start getting integrated in a community. We are actually gonna be soliciting mentors very soon for next summer for that program. So if you're interested, please get in touch with me. I'd love to put you in touch with the director of the program. Essentially how it works is we get mentors signed up, students apply, and we do sort of a match to find hopefully good connections between students and practitioners. One more sort of thing that we do, or at least I want to do more of, is getting practitioners in front of students. If you are interested in sort of sharing your stories with students, helping dispel myths about what rural practice is like and whether you can, make a good living doing, legal work in a small place, I would love to help connect you with students. So also please get in touch with me if that interests you. The third category of things is once lawyers are out the door from Maine law and they're in practice, how can we encourage them? How can we support them? And a couple of the programs that come to mind are the Justice Mead Fellowship for Pro Bono Service. It's a training program for lawyers that commit to doing some pro bono service. It's open to lawyers across the state, but I think it's a good support program for really anyone who's looking for a little bit of training, connection, mentorship. And there's also, of course, the Rural Practice Tax Credit that provides a $6,000 credit for 5 new attorneys each year who are committing to working in rural areas. So it's a lot of programs. There's a lot of room for expansion and support and, continued support so we can make sure that they continue to exist. But that's sort of what we've been doing so far.
Wonderful. Thank you for outlining those for us. They all sound like terrific programs. I'd like to turn our attention now sort of specifically to the task force, its formation, and then from there its work going forward. So the task force had essentially, as I alluded to in my introduction, came together from some disparate strands of folks working on similar issues. I'd like to hear from Just Mead for a moment about the JAG Pro Bono Committee's early involvement and how that helped to lead to the task force.
Thanks, Stacy. Yeah, I think that the JAG Pro Bono Committee was one of the moving forces in kicking this off. When Magistrate Judge Wolf, who's on this call, took over as the chair of the Pro Bono Committee, she really took a deep dive into the issue of rural access to justice and the shortage of lawyers there. Held hearings, held meetings, gathered folks, had focus groups, and moved the thing forward. And I think she's probably here and could talk to it herself, but they came to the point, okay, we have got a good handle on the problem. There are many things that are taking place in different silos, sometimes working together, sometimes not. But this is a problem that can only be solved by working together. So she threw out the challenge to the bar to come together with a working group to move the ball forward. And that group, the MSBA, stepped up and took it as a task force. But it really emanated at the start point from Magistrate Judge Wolf's work with the Pro Bono Committee at JAG. And we're delighted to see this group taking over.
As letting us know sort of who is on now it is formed. So if you could answer that sort of two-part question. One, what was the MSBA's early work on these issues? And two, what organizations are represented on the task force now that it's come together?
Yeah, certainly. I joined the Board of Governors and the Bar Association in February of 2020. And that summer, as part of our strategic planning with the board, we adopted a goal of putting together a working group to start working on the issue of rural access to justice and how to better support the rural practice of law. We did that by forming an ad hoc committee within the Board of Governors that was made up of 5 or 6 practitioners from around the state. Similar to the JAG Pro Bono Committee, we undertook a kind of a learning phase. We met with representatives from other state bar associations to determine what programs that they had put in place, what they had seen work in their states. Because what we quickly realized is this is not a Maine issue. Access to justice in rural areas is an issue in every state in the country. And just about every state has tried to address the issue. 3 years into working on this problem, I'd say that I don't think I've seen a solution that necessarily works comprehensively across the board. Everybody's tried a little of this or a little of that. And so our plan was really to try to come up with something a little bit more comprehensive that addressed all of the issues that we were identifying in our ad hoc committee. The problem we had was that we were 5 practitioners spread across the state without a whole lot of reach or influence. And so we felt we were always looking for a partner, a group of people who could be, help us accomplish that, give us that reach, give us that influence. And it was around that time that we were contacted by Liz and the Liz Stout and the JAG Pro Bono Committee. And this partnership grew, which evolved into this task force. We met early on, I think maybe about a year ago, probably, to determine, what stakeholders really should we have be part of this group. We determined to cast a wide net, to really look at all of the stakeholders in the legal community who are touching on this issue. And we were really, really surprised and happy with the response. The committee, as it's made up right now, the task force, as it's made up right now, has representatives from the judiciary, including Justice Mead and Justice Nelson. Attorney General Aaron Fry is on the task force. We've got representatives from MCILS, Pine Tree Legal, Legal Services for the Elderly, ILAP, Arya from the Board of Overseers is on the task force. We have, of course, Erika, as well as David Susi, who's doing the Rural Clinic in Fort Kent, representing the law school. We have representatives from district attorneys' offices, as well as several private practice attorneys who are on the ground dealing with this issue every day. So it really is a comprehensive group. It's been a lot of really tremendous discussion. We've been meeting, I think, now for about 8 or 9 months. So it's been going really well.
Great. Well, that leads me into what I think is probably the meat of this discussion, namely, what does the task force hope to accomplish going forward? I'll mix it up a little bit and ask Justice Mead, from your perspective, what would you like to see the task force accomplish going forward?
Thanks, Stacy. I think big picture, moving forward, this is not going to be a process that ends when the task force issues its report, hopefully fairly soon. But I think it will contain a number of recommendations, and then it will be, I think, to the organizations to work together, to collaborate, share resources. For me, and this is just me speaking, not the task force itself, but I'm looking for certain concepts in the report. To me, it kind of boils down to 3 concepts, 3 things that I think will move the ball forward that I'm characterizing as encouragement, incentives, and the narrative. And what I mean by that is we need to actively encourage new lawyers or lawyers who are perhaps looking for a change to get out, try it. You'll like it. I think probably the buzzword for this is messaging, but the message should be that we as a profession are encouraging people to do this, and it comes in so many forms. The second item is incentives, which I guess I would characterize as nudges, motivation. And Erika mentioned a couple, including the rural practice tax credit, which actually has been very successful. It is motivating lawyers who are inclined to make a change to enter into rural practice with promises to be involved with the MCILS criminal defense aspect, but also doing pro bono. So I think there are many more possible incentives, nudges. I think we need to be creative and get a carrot and a stick out there to motivate people to go out to the rural practice areas. And then finally, I guess what I'm calling the narrative, another buzzword. The narrative, when we spread this word, has to emphasize the true facts. And the true facts is that rural practice is personally rewarding. It's becoming a respected leader in the community. It's remunerative. You can make a decent living out there. Our rural practitioners will support that. And finally, and this is, I think, a big point, we need to stop making it sound like it's a banishment to the gulag. It's not Siberia. It provides a great quality of life. Just ask any rural practitioner. But I think we do the opposite message. We make it sound like this is a terrible thing, but someone's got to do it. How about you? How are we going to motivate anybody with that message? We need to get the true facts out there, which rural practice is rewarding, remunerative, and it's a great quality of life. When we talk, I guess, at the last step in this thing about how the private bar can help, I'll come back around to that. But I'm looking for the report from the task force to sort of put meat on the bones to the concepts that I rolled out right there. And I'm very optimistic that it will. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Justice Mead. And obviously he's mentioned a report. I would love to hear from you, Zach, about what we can expect in that forthcoming report. And then Erika, if you have any additional comments, I'd love to hear from the law school's perspective as well. So Zach, can you talk a little bit about the forthcoming report?
Yeah, certainly. We do have a subcommittee from within the task force that's working to draft the report, which includes Erika and myself and a couple others. I agree with Justice Mead in that, this report should not be the end goal. And for me personally, it's not the end goal. It's really the conversation starter. It's here are the issues. Here are the programs that exist addressing the issue. Here are how those programs are either succeeding or failing or how we can better support them. And then here are some ideas for either new programs or other needs that are required to support the practice of law in these rural areas. That report is being drafted, but it is going a little slower than we had hoped. I would optimistically say we'll have it out probably around the turn of the year. And we'll have that out for the public. But again, it's really should be a conversation starter. I think Justice Mead will be happy when he sees the report because our focus really is on a lot of those issues that he's just identified. Like I said, we really need to support some of the existing programs like mock trial, like the Rural Practice Fellowship, which has had some funding issues in the recent past. Those are good programs that address this issue that already exist, that already show that they can be successful. They just need more support. There's a lot of things that we're not doing that other states and other areas have tried to support rural practice. And I think one of the major issues that faces rural practice is that you're either, particularly for private practice attorneys, whether you're a solo or in a small firm, it's hard from Machias or from Fort Kent to really be active in recruiting new attorneys from Portland or from Boston. And so I think we can come up with a better system of some kind of collective action, some kind of clearinghouse for these types of issues that are really around recruiting and promoting the rural practice, as Justice Mead has hinted at, really changing the perception of what it means to be a rural attorney, and that not only can you be successful, but you can have a high quality of life in doing it. So that's what I would expect, and it might be.
Anything to add from your perspective?
Not much to add from my perspective, really. Although I guess I'd just say this, I want to help with this as much as I can. I mean, right now, the law school can serve as sort of a de facto clearinghouse. If you're a rural attorney who wants to bring on an associate, you're trying to retire, you need someone to come in, sort of help and get up to speed, please let us know. We have ways that we can get these opportunities in front of our students, in front of our alumni, and we'd love to help with that. I know that's not solving the entire problem, but it's something I truly hope that any of you will take me up on if you think that could help.
Terrific, and brings up an excellent point. So after this call, if folks have suggestions or questions or comments, who is the best person to contact?
Well, I guess I'll say this, if specifically if you are interested in hosting a student for the Rural Practice Fellowship, if you want to get in touch with students at Maine Law or alumni, please reach out to me at lawcareer@maine.edu, LAW career. I mean, I'm happy to take suggestions more generally for the task force and the report as well.
And similarly, if you do have suggestions for the task force, although I feel that we have a pretty comprehensive and exhaustive group of people, certainly that doesn't mean we've got all the ideas. And if you've got something that you think would be beneficial for us to consider, maybe we haven't considered it. So please reach out to me, Zachary at halehamlin.com. You can contact me through the Bar Association website. Also, the Bar Association, a free plug, Angela, has a great message board system if you're a member, Maine Bar Connect, which I think could also be an important thing to utilize for rural practitioners and being able to communicate across vast distances about common issues. So either on Maine Bar Connect or send me an email. I'm happy to consider your suggestions.
Terrific. And it looks like we have at least 2 questions. Angela, I think there's one question in the chat, if you could read it, and then we will hear from Justice Alexander, who has his hand up.
Yes, we heard from someone who said, I just moved my practice to a rural area, Franklin County, and the courts are not being as supportive as I had hoped of the move. How do we get more support in acquiring permission for remote appearances? I still have to have cases in the larger courts because there isn't enough paid work to support a practice, but the rural areas deserve to be able to have attorneys in town.
So I guess the question is, are the courts facilitating remote appearances, or any tips on that, if so?
I guess I can jump in there. After the pandemic allegedly ended, the rules we were operating under changed, but we recognized the value of remote hearings in a number of settings, including rural access to justice. The the administrative order governing remote appearances has changed a bit, but it's still quite flexible. And anybody who is trying to float a rural practice and is finding that in person is creating difficulties, they can contact the Chief Justice or the Chief Judge of the court in which they are seeking this. And I hope the court will be accommodating for that. I mean, it's part of the reason why we kept the rule there, was to provide for circumstances like this. So they should simply make that inquiry, either of the Chief Judge of the court involved, or send it to me and I can, send it up the pike. And I'm not picking up your audio, Stacy. Are you online?
Yes, I apologize. Maybe there was a blip in my audio.
Okay, yes, we missed it.
Sorry about that. Anyway, I was just going to turn it over to Justice Alexander.
Thank you, Stacy. I really don't necessarily turn it over. The one thing I want to say I haven't heard mentioned on here, as a part of initiatives by a number of state sort of indigent defense groups, including a lot of work that Justin Andrus did. The department, while I was executive director, the Department of Education has changed their rules for getting debt relief programs. Now, beyond being a sort of employed person in a public defense agency or a legal service agency, things like that, if you do 30 hours, if you average over the course of a year, 30 hours of work compensated by Maine, in Maine, the Indigent Defense Program, Maine MCILS, you can qualify for debt relief the same way as doctors or veterinarians or others who work for private people and get paid do if they serve in underserved areas. In Maine, it's not necessarily underserved areas, or in the law debt relief program, it's not underserved areas, but it is, working on with hourly compensation, averaging 30 hours a week, which can provide a lawyer who wants to work in a rural area a lot of time to do other civil stuff. you can get debt relief if you qualify into that program for the Department of Education. I know the law school has some background information about that. I've talked to Dean Softly, who I see on the program also, about that. The last time we had a good program on indigent defense practice down at the law school in September. So that's something, another thing that can provide some incentive and real serious debt relief opportunities for people that join that program and do hourly work on it. Thank you.
And that's a great addition to the incentives. We've at the task force received a bunch of suggestions for incentives like CLE credits for pro bono work, fee shifting for pro bono work, all of which will be, I assume, included just as part of the background in the report itself. But no, that's incentives, I think, are critical to this.
And I think Justice Alexander really raises another point there. With the current rates provided by MCILS of $150 an hour, if you were to bill that 30 hours a week, I mean, you can just do the math. That's about $234,000 a year in a rural practice. And on top of that, if that makes you eligible for student loan debt forgiveness or some other kind of relief, there really are, you know, the conversation we never want to have as lawyers, it seems to be, is about money. But that's a conversation I think it's important to have, to make sure, you know, students or people considering a rural practice understand you can make money in rural practice.
Terrific addition. Are there any other questions from anyone on the call?
If there aren't questions, Stacy, can I take a minute just to get on, as long as I have a platform here?
Absolutely. Looks like there are no questions, so take your minute.
All right. My push here, one of the questions we had in our work sheets here was, how can the private bar help? And there are many, many ways, but the one that really goes up the flagpole for me is mentoring. I think the lack of mentoring for folks, you know, out in the hinterlands is one of the big pushbacks. So you may have a new lawyer or a lawyer who's looking for a change, but realizing if they do practice in a rural setting, they're going to have to be a general practitioner. And they may not have a background in the types, you know, in domestic relations, in evictions, in municipal law, and all the things they'll be called upon to do. It's very daunting to think that they're on their own. Just they went to law school and they can check the statutes, but there's no substitute for experience. There are efforts underway for mentoring. I think the law school has really taken some huge steps in the right direction. I'm sure Dean Softly probably does something to say about that. That's great. The VLP is doing mentoring, but I would love to see some organization, JAG would like to do it, but we have no resources, we have no staff, but to create a database of lawyers who experienced, proficient, who would be willing to serve as mentors on the phone to folks doing pro bono or rural practice. So if somebody in rural practice gets a municipal law case and they're totally uncomfortable, they know they can call Attorney Jones and she will tell them this is how this works here. I think that would take the stress and apprehension out of it for an awful lot of folks, make them much more likely to go to rural practice if they had access to this database of lawyers willing to do it. But that involves work and administration. There would have to be someone in charge of that and keeping up and make the contacts. As I said, JAG can't do it, but maybe my wish list down the road is that some organization would be able to jump in and create this, I don't want to call it bureaucracy, but at least an organized way to get folks hooked up with the folks who can help them. The Trial Judge Association tried something like it some years ago, and I think it failed because it required so much administrative backup to make it work. But if we could ever create a statewide mentoring program to support rural practitioners, I think that would really help the numbers go up. So thank you for letting me jump on my platform, Stacy, and I'll yield.
Oh, absolutely. And it was a great point. I specifically asked who people should contact if they have suggestions, but it's always helpful to know what types of ways people can help to give them that fodder to think about. It looks like we have another question from Justice Alexander, another comment, and then Jonathan Dunitz after that. So Justice Alexander.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacy. It seems to me that sounds like what we need to do to accomplish Justice Mead's suggestion is revitalize and perhaps revamp a little bit the Bar Association's Silent Partners program, which is precisely what its original concept was aimed to do, was to provide some mentoring support for lawyers who have an area where they're not quite sure of the law on and need somebody who was more familiar with the area to do it. Now, in terms of, you know, the compensation issues and things like that, I don't know how that works out, but I would think looking at and perhaps adjusting the Silent Partners program might be an area to look at with you now as president and Jonathan, where'd he go, coming in.
That's a good point, and definitely something to look at. I have heard from attorneys in rural areas that the Silent Partner program is appreciated. So that might be something that we could look at, see if we could revamp that in some fashion. Jonathan, you had your hand up as well?
Yeah, I was actually going to raise the Silent Partners option as something the bar offers, but Justice Alexander makes a good point about studying it, and I think my first act as president will be putting the immediate past president on that task.
I already regret calling on you, Jonathan, but no, that's something I'm happy to look at. Any other questions or comments from folks?
I have one. Dawn.
Oh, there you are. Yes, please
Wait.
speak.
When is the report of the task force approximately going to be issued?
I'm going to say around the turn of the year, Don. No promises, but that's my hope and that's my expectation at this point.
Looking forward to it.
I appreciate that. I also just wanted to correct myself when I was giving the list of folks who are in the task force. I see Liz Stout's on the call, and I shouted her out as an integral part in creating the task force as part of her work with the JAG Pro Bono Committee. But she also is a representative from VLP on the task force. So hi, Liz, and sorry about that.
One of many hats that Liz wears, I'm sure. So, all right. Any other questions or comments? All right, well, I want to thank everyone for joining us. This is obviously a very important topic that touches all of us. This will certainly not be the last word on the subject. I think we're all looking forward to the report and considering these matters in the future. So thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.